Hello, my name is Adenike. I'm the creative director of Nickdan Creations, and in this tutorial I'll be teaching you how I made this bag. Okay, for you to be able to make this bag, you must have a little understanding about bag making. The first step is creating the curved pattern. Okay, that's the pattern you have on the bag. The measurement of the bag is about 9 inches, so I'm using a chipboard. It's called chipboard to draft my curved pattern. So, and I'm using a 9 by 4 inches. You need to determine the center of your pattern, then you determine how deep you want the curve to be. So I did 2 inches from the right and from the left. That is from my 9 inches after I have determined the center of my pattern. So it's important that you fold in your pattern into two when you're actually doing your draft, so that you are sure of your center as it is, so that when you're doing your markings there won't be error. It's better this way rather than just doing measuring on the right and measuring on the left and cutting. It's good you fold in. That's why it's advisable you work with a pattern and not just doing measuring and cutting at all times. So I'm trying to get the shape that I want. It's not compulsory you make your shape like this. You can improvise. You can make it a square pattern. You can even make it a plain pattern. You may not curve it, but for this design I'm drafting this pattern so that I'm able to trace this out on my board. So you can see what I have. It's not properly curved, so I'm still going again to use a cover of a container to actually get a proper curved shape. So I'm just trimming that off, so I'm sure I have a perfect curve that will be applicable for my design. So this looks good to me now. I'm good to go. Now there is a cover, you can also call it a flap for the purse. So I need to draft that pattern too. I'm using 3 inch by 4 inches of the chipboard to draft the pattern. So the same cover is what I used to draw my circle to give me a curved shape. So I just placed it on the pattern to see what it looks like. Okay, that's where I'm going to be attaching my lock. Okay, that's my snap. But to me, I'm adding 1 inch to this pattern. So when I'm cutting my leather, I'm going to consider that, so that because some part of the leather will actually go into the bag when I need to sew. So I have transferred the pattern to my board. The board I'm using for this is called a chipboard, and the measurement is 19 inches by 9 inches. Now the pattern I drafted is what I used to actually shape the edge of the bag, and that's my gusset. So in cutting my gusset, I added 1 inch to the side and ½ inch to the length, so that is my sewing allowance. Now I have actually done the measurement of my board, and this is an old synthetic leather that I have at the workshop. So I'm just going to apply glue to it, and apply glue also onto my Kariboard, and I fix same for this. It's important to state that this measurement depends on what you want to achieve. If you want your bag to be smaller, you reduce your measurements. I use inches most times, okay, and so instead of doing about 9 inches, you can choose to do 7 inches for your width. Instead of making your gusset 3 inches, you can choose to make it 5 inches. It all depends on what you want to achieve. Now, my bag has a chain handle, so I'm going to use these rings. This is not so circle, but this is a ring that's going to hold my chain. So what I did there was to apply a glue to the leather itself, so that I can actually insert it when it's time. So that is the base, the body, whatever you choose to call it, of my bag. The Kariboard is skeleton, and the synthetic leather is actually the flesh that is covering up that board, so that you can have a structured bag. So now when you have a pattern that is not so straight, that is curved, it is important to do some notching so that you're able to fold your leather accordingly. And I encourage you to dedicate a scissors to working with glue, so that you don't get to spoil your clothing scissors if you happen to make other crafts. So you see what I did there, I had to notch those edges so that I'm able to fold my leather in. I'm using a synthetic leather here. It's called synthetic. Some other people call them fox leather. Okay, so with the glue, attach the glue also to the edges of the board, so that you can actually have a good folding. Remember, you are attaching the skin to the skeleton. The board is your skeleton, and the leather or fabric or whatever you choose as the outer part of your bag is actually the skin. So you have to fold well to give you the shape of the board. This is very, very important. Now, while you're folding, you may observe that you're not getting a good shape. That means you may need to do more notching of the edges, so to speak. The tool I have here is actually called mallet. It is not hammer. Okay, you see the black round, it's actually soft. It's not as soft as foam, but it is not metal. So it's just good. You can use it to apply pressure on your craft. So it's not an hammer. Now, after doing your folding, you need to trim off your excess so that your bag will not be bulky at the edges. If you don't have a mallet, you just improvise and just do something to actually apply more pressure at those edges. Now, what I want to do here is to attach my bag feet. Okay, some other people call it bottom cap. Okay, what that does is that you make your bag stand properly, and it protects the base of your bag so that it doesn't touch so much dirt. So now you just have to open up the pin and it's secured. You can go the extra mile of placing a chipboard on it if you want to. Remember my chain holder, so that's the leather for it. So I have applied glue before, so the next thing I'm doing is just to have a neat cut and insert it and keep it aside to be used as I go on. This is for my gusset. Gusset is the side of your bag. You see, the extra 1 inch that I said you add to the side and the half inch is to actually allow you to do a proper sewing without affecting the shape of your bag. So I have one cut out and I'm just using it to trace out the part I need to cut away for you to see. So for instance, if your gusset is actually 3 by 7, that is your bag measurement. Now if you're cutting a gusset, it will become 4 by 7.5. The 0.5 is to add it to the base of the bag, and the extra 1 inch is the half inch that you need on each side to attach to the bag. So that's the logic behind using this kind of gusset for your handmade bags. So it's still the same process. You apply glue to your synthetic and then you apply glue to your chipboard. If you observe, I'm using chipboard for the gusset, which is also the side of the bag, and not Kariboard. Chipboard is softer and is easier to manipulate, because when you have to sew, if it's too hard, your machine may not be able to run it, and it just makes your bag so rigid. But with the chipboard, it's more flexible and easier to work with. Now the type of glue I'm using is Kariboard. Okay, it's actually in a container, and I pour a little inside a smaller container, because if you expose it to air, it gets dried up. So apologies, I'm not showing you in this video, but subsequently I'll just show you what my glue looks like. And if you're allergic to strong smell, it's advisable you use a nose covering, or you work where it is very ventilated, so that you don't get allergy. So if you observe that I had to notch that corner so that I'm able to fold in my leather. So that's that, and I'm doing the same thing for the second one. Remember, always trim off your excess so that you don't have a bulky edge. If you have a bulky edge, your finishing will be nice. So you can see I'm just trimming the corners, and while trimming you have to be careful so that you don't trim up your pattern or skeleton of your bag, if you choose to call it that. So that's my chain handle. That's where I choose to put it. You can actually put it another way, but that's how I'm using it for this particular bag. So you see, that's what your gusset is going to look like when it's time to fix it on your bag. But before we get to this stage, you still need to put lining, so you can see the half inch below and the half inch to the right and to the left.
Just today, or maybe two, since I saw you, but now I won't come back.
So the lining I'm using here is actually a velvet, so it doesn't have raw edges now, it doesn't fray. So if you are using synthetic lining, you may have to fold in the edges of your lining when you're working, but for this I don't need to do that because it's velvet. So folding the edge, that is the top, okay, of your lining. Can you see properly now? Okay, so that is my chain holder. I need to identify the center of my gusset so that I can fix accordingly. Now put glue at the edges, okay, of the gusset so that you can secure your lining before you go to the machine and sew. So that's the center of my bag. So then I'm transferring my lining to it now. So I need to use my mallet to hold it. Then I'm going to stitch just straight down to secure it. I'm here repeating the same step. Now I need to trim off the excess. Now when you're doing this trimming, you have to go in a little bit. So the lining will not be exact size of your gusset. It must be smaller, just a little smaller, so that your lining is not tucking out when you finish your bag. So just trim off the sides. You can see that you can see little edges of my leather. So this is ready for the machine. Now this is my magnetic snap for the back flap. Now I need to identify the center. Once I've done that, you just place the snap and just make a marking. Then you fix your magnetic snap. Here I'm checking my measurements. It is not accurate. I'm not in the center. Now this can be bad at times. When you're working, you may have to now destroy this and just do another cutting entirely. But this instance, the distance is not so much, so I'm still able to manage it without the former hole that I punched is not showing. So the part of this snap is covering it properly. Now I need to put in glue so that I can cover it up and to be ready for the machine too. Remember that this pattern I said I was going to add more to it because I think it's not long enough. So that's the excess you have behind the skeleton. You get, you see. We're calling the board the skeleton and our leather is the skin for this particular bag. So before we proceed, the second part of the magnetic snap should be fixed before we cover this up with lining. So I'm just repeating the same process. The flat part is already on the flap. Now the bulkier part of the magnetic snap is what I'm putting on the body of the bag. I hope you can see that. So I'm putting the washer, that's what we call it. Then I'm going to just spread, and that's secured. There's a rule to gluing. It's important after you've applied your glue that you allow it to dry a little before you fix it. So I'm going to take that to the machine and I'm going to stitch round. Now this is also the inner of my bag. Now because of this shape, it looks more beautiful if your leather is actually at the top and not all through with the lining. You can choose to use lining all through, but I prefer to use part of the leather for the top of the bag. So I attach the lining to the edges of the inner of the bag. Now for that, you can see I actually use chipboard too and not Kariboard because it's lighter. So I'm going to attach the lining to the body of the bag before taking it to the machine. This can be tricky. You just need to make sure it is properly aligned. So it's important that it is properly aligned. You can now secure it. Looking at it, my line is a little bigger. It has a little excess. So I'm just transferring that excess to the base of the bag. So it's time to trim the excess by the side before taking it to the sewing machine. Remember, the measurement is actually a guide. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, depending on what you want to achieve. You can make another design entirely. Okay, so I almost forgot to add my flap, but thank goodness I remembered in a good time, because if I actually leave that for about 10 minutes, I may not be able to open it up. That's how strong the glue is. So that is going to go in. So that's the first step to attach the gusset. You attach the base to the bag. Now, the reason why I'm using this machine is to tell you that you can use your some people call it blackhead machine. You can use your blackhead machine to finish your bag if you don't have an industrial machine. So this is to show you that you can actually use it once you have the appropriate needle and you are using the appropriate thread. You can see it's the same machine that I used to attach that. So what I did there, to make the joining easy, I attached the base of the gusset to the base of the bag. Then I'm applying glue to the edges of the gusset and the edges of the bag to secure it before taking it to the machine. Now, the base, attaching the base necessarily does not need glue. You can just put it and stitch. But for you to be able to attach the gusset effectively, you need to apply glue to hold it together for a while before going to the sewing machine. You can see how I did that corner. Okay, you just fold it in. And it's as simple as that. So actually I need to apply some pressure, so I'm using pegs. This is wooden pegs, but you can actually use plastic pegs if that is what you have at your disposal. You can actually use a book pin too if it's strong enough to hold the gusset. So I'm just going to do the same thing on the second side of the bag. So same thing, I'm just attaching the gussets. Remember, the gusset is the side of your bag. So I'm going to use my industrial machine to finish this. It's a cylinder bed machine. So yes. Now if you're using your blanket machine, it's just the same thing. You just have to just do a straight stitch. Now because I've actually done the base sewing, I don't need to continue. The reason, if I'm not doing a tutorial, once I'm ready with my bag, I just attach use glue to hold it, and this machine we actually do the sewing straight up. But because for the benefit of people that do not have a cylinder bed, the first step is attach the base of your gusset to the base of your bag. That's the first step. Then you use a glue to attach the sides together. Then you take it back to your machine. For the cylinder bed, we actually do the sewing from the beginning, do the curve sewing all to the other side. So that's it. Our bag is ready. It's time to take it out. I hope you enjoyed this training. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment. Thank you.